Virgin Maid rescued a boy from the street, unaware he was the billionaire's son. The rain hammered against the Brooklyn pavement like bullets, each drop a small explosion of sound and fury. Maya Torres clutched her coat tighter as she hurried down the alley behind the Riverside Hotel, her shift finally over after 14 grueling hours of scrubbing toilets and changing sheets. At 23 years old, her hands were already cracked and aged beyond their years, testimony to a life spent in service to people who never learned her name. Her feet ached in her worn sneakers, the soles so thin she could feel every crack in the concrete. Her back screamed from bending over bathtubs and beds all day. But this was her life, had been her life since she was 16 and her mother died, leaving her alone in a city that did not care whether she lived or died. That is when she saw him. If you are enjoying this story, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything. The boy could not have been more than 8 years old, curled against a dumpster like a broken doll. His clothes, though soaked and muddy, looked expensive. Designer jeans with that distinctive stitching Maya had seen in store windows she could never afford to enter. A cashmere sweater torn at the shoulder, the kind that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Blood trickled from a cut above his left eye, mixing with rainwater and tears, creating pink rivulets down his pale cheek. Maya stopped in her tracks, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten. She looked around the alley, searching for parents, for anyone who might be looking for this child. But the alley was empty, except for overflowing dumpsters and the constant curtain of rain. It was nearly midnight. No child should be out here alone, especially not one who looked like he belonged in a Park Avenue penthouse rather than a Brooklyn back alley. Maya dropped to her knees without thinking, ignoring the cold water that immediately soaked through her uniform pants. Instinct took over, the same instinct that made her chase pigeons away from her windowsill each morning and leave food for the stray cats in her neighborhood. She could not walk past suffering, no matter how exhausted she was, no matter how little she had to give. Her mother had been the same way, always helping neighbors even when they had nothing themselves. It was probably what killed her in the end, working herself to death to help everyone but herself. "Hey, sweetheart," Maya whispered, reaching out slowly so as not to startle him. "Are you okay?" The boy flinched violently, pressing himself harder against the cold metal of the dumpster. His eyes, bright green even in the dim light filtering from the street, were wild with terror. He reminded Maya of a rabbit caught in headlights, frozen between fight and flight. His breathing was rapid and shallow, the beginning of a panic attack, and Maya recognized it because she had experienced plenty of her own over the years. "I am not going to hurt you," Maya said softly, keeping her voice low and soothing. She took off her coat, revealing the thin hotel uniform beneath, and held it out to him with steady hands. "You are freezing. Please take this. You need it more than I do." The boy stared at the coat, then at her face, searching for some sign of deception. His eyes were ancient in his young face, like he had seen things no child should ever see. Maya stayed perfectly still, letting him decide, letting him take his time. She knew what it was like to be scared, to not know who to trust. The city taught you that lesson early and often. Whatever he saw in her face must have convinced him, because after a long moment that stretched like taffy, he reached out with trembling fingers and accepted the coat. His hands were small and delicate, with dirt under the nails and bruises on the knuckles. He had been fighting, Maya realized. Fighting for his life, maybe. "What is your name?" Maya asked, keeping her voice gentle. "Ethan," he whispered. His voice was hoarse, as if he had been screaming for hours. Ethan Blackwell. The name meant nothing to Maya. She did not read society pages or follow celebrity gossip. She did not have time for television or internet beyond checking her work schedule. Her world consisted of bus schedules, discount grocery stores where she bought dented cans and expired bread, and the relentless struggle to keep her head above water. If she had recognized the surname Blackwell, one of the wealthiest families in America, featured regularly on Forbes lists and gossip columns, her entire life might have unfolded differently, but ignorance in this case was a kind of grace. "Okay, Ethan, that is a nice name. I am Maya. Can you tell me what happened? Where are your parents?" Fresh tears spilled down his cheeks, cutting clean tracks through the grime. They took me. Bad men with guns and masks. They wanted money from my dad, lots of money, but I ran when they were not watching. I climbed out a bathroom window and I ran and ran and ran. I have been running for so long. I do not know where I am. I do not know how to get home. Maya felt ice crystallize in her stomach, spreading through her veins like frost. Kidnapping. This was serious, dangerous, way beyond her pay grade. The smart thing, the logical thing, would be to call the police immediately and let them handle it. They had resources, training, equipment. She was just a maid with $37 in her bank account and no idea how to help a kidnapped child. But something in Ethan's eyes stopped her. The absolute terror when she opened her mouth to suggest calling authorities. "Please do not call anyone," he begged, his small hands gripping her wet uniform. "Please. The men. They said they have someone inside the police. They said if my dad calls the cops, they will know immediately, and they will kill me. They said they have people everywhere, watching everything. I just need to get home. I need to get to my dad. But I do not know how." Maya made a decision that would change everything, that would upend her entire life in ways she could not possibly imagine. She made it based on instinct, on the desperate fear in a child's eyes, on the fundamental belief that you help when someone needs help. Consequences be damned. "Come on," she said, standing and offering her hand. "My apartment is not far from here, maybe 10 blocks. We will get you warm, get you cleaned up, and figure out what to do next. But we need to move now, before anyone sees us. Can you walk?" Ethan hesitated for only a second before taking her hand. His grip was surprisingly strong for such a small boy, desperate and trusting all at once, like she was the only solid thing in a liquid world. He stood on shaky legs and Maya saw he was barefoot, his feet bloody and torn from running on city streets. "Oh, sweetheart," she breathed, looking at his ruined feet. "Okay, new plan." Before Ethan could protest, Maya scooped him up in her arms. He was lighter than she expected, too light for a boy his age, like he had not been eating properly. He wrapped his arms around her neck and buried his face in her shoulder, and Maya felt his tears soaking through her uniform. They moved through the streets like ghosts, Maya constantly checking over her shoulder for any sign of pursuit. Every car that passed made her heart jump. Every shadow seemed threatening, but the late hour worked in their favor. The streets were mostly empty, except for the occasional taxi or delivery truck. New York City, for once, was giving them privacy. Her apartment was in one of the worst neighborhoods in Brooklyn, the kind of place where gunshots were background music and most people minded their own business. Police rarely came unless absolutely necessary. Ambulances took their time. It was the kind of neighborhood where you could disappear and no one would ask questions. For once, Maya was grateful for the anonymity poverty provided. The building itself was a 5-story walk-up from the 1920s, all crumbling brick and broken windows. The front door lock had been broken for months, so anyone could walk in. The hallway smelled like urine and old cooking grease. Graffiti covered the walls. It was home, but only because Maya could not afford anything better. Her studio apartment was on the 4th floor of a building without a working elevator. The landlord kept promising to fix it, but that promise was 3 years old now. By the time they reached her door, Ethan was breathing hard, his earlier run clearly having depleted what little energy he had left. His eyes were half closed, shock and exhaustion taking their toll. Maya unlocked 3 separate deadbolts, each one a different key, and ushered him inside. She locked everything behind them, including the chain lock, and finally allowed herself to breathe. The space was tiny, barely 300 square feet, but it was clean. Maya might be poor, but she refused to live in filth. A Murphy bed dominated one wall, currently folded up to save space. A kitchenette occupied one corner, just a hot plate, a mini fridge, and a microwave. A bathroom the size of a closet occupied another corner. The only window looked out onto another brick wall, so close she could touch it if she opened the window. Natural light was a luxury she could not afford. It was not much, but it was hers, earned through countless hours of backbreaking work that destroyed her body one day at a time. "Bathroom is there," Maya pointed to the tiny door. "Take a hot shower as hot as you can stand. We need to warm you up and clean those cuts." I will find you some clothes, though they will be way too big. Are you hungry? Ethan nodded, suddenly looking every bit the scared child he was, no longer trying to be brave. Maya felt her heart crack a little wider, felt something maternal and fierce bloom in her chest. This boy needed protecting, and she would protect him, no matter what it cost. While Ethan showered, Maya rummaged through her drawers, eventually finding an old oversized t-shirt from a charity 5K she had run years ago and sweatpants with a drawstring. They would be enormous on him, but they were clean and warm and soft. She set them outside the bathroom door and knocked gently. "Clothes are out here when you're ready, sweetheart." Then she went to her kitchen and took stock of her supplies. Her refrigerator was almost empty, as usual near the end of a pay period. 2 eggs, their expiration date questionable. A half loaf of bread with one corner of green mold that she could cut off. Some butter. A jar of strawberry jam. A carton of milk that might be turning. It would have to do. She made scrambled eggs and toast, using the last of both, and set the plate on her small folding table with a glass of milk. Her own dinner would have to wait, maybe indefinitely. She had $37 in her bank account, and payday was 4 days away. Those $37 needed to cover her subway card refill and hopefully some ramen noodles. Feeding herself was a luxury she would have to skip. Ethan emerged from the bathroom, looking like a child playing dress-up in adult clothes. The t-shirt hung past his knees like a dress. The sweatpants pooled around his ankles in fabric puddles. His wet hair stood up in dark spikes, and without the dirt and blood, she could see he was actually a beautiful child, with fine features and that striking green eyes and skin so pale it was almost translucent. The cut above his eye had stopped bleeding, but it would definitely leave a scar. His feet were clean now, revealing the full extent of the damage. Deep cuts, bruises, what might be a broken toe. He devoured the food in minutes, barely pausing to breathe or chew. Maya watched from the counter, sipping water from a chipped mug and trying to ignore her growling stomach. When had she eaten last? Lunch the previous day, maybe. A sad salad she had made from wilted lettuce and expired dressing. Time and meals blurred together when you worked as many hours as she did, when food was something you sacrificed to make rent. "Thank you," Ethan said when he finished, his voice stronger now, steadier. "You did not have to help me. You did not have to give me your food." "Of course I did," Maya replied simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "You needed help. What else would I do?" "Most people would not have stopped," Ethan said, his voice suddenly older than his years. "Most people would have walked right past. My tutor, Miss Jennifer, she says most people only care about themselves. She says the world is divided into winners and losers, and winners never help losers because it makes them weak." Maya felt anger spark in her chest. "Your tutor sounds like a terrible person." "Listen to me, Ethan. The world is not divided into winners and losers. It is divided into people who help and people who do not. And yeah, a lot of people do not. But that does not mean you should not. Helping people does not make you weak. It makes you human." Ethan studied her with an intensity unusual for someone so young, like he was trying to memorize her face, her words, everything about this moment. "Are you rich?" Maya laughed, a sound brittle with exhaustion and irony. "No, sweetheart. Very much the opposite. I am probably the poorest person you will ever meet. But you gave me your coat, and your food, and your bed probably. If you are not rich, you cannot afford that. My dad says you should never give away what you cannot afford to lose." "Some things are more important than money," Maya said softly, kneeling in front of him so they were eye level. "Like making sure little boys are safe and fed and warm. Your worth is not measured in dollars, Ethan, and neither is mine. We are worth helping, both of us, just because we are human beings who deserve kindness." "My dad says everything is about money," Ethan whispered. "He says money is power, and power is everything. He says people without money do not matter because they have nothing to offer." "Your dad is wrong," Maya said gently but firmly. "I do not have money, but I have time. I have energy. I have compassion. Those things matter just as much. Maybe more. Money is just paper, Ethan. It can buy things, sure, but it cannot buy what really matters. It cannot buy love or kindness or the feeling you get when you help someone who needs help. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, processing this radical new philosophy that contradicted everything he had been taught. Finally, he said, I like you. I like you better than anyone I have ever met. Maya smiled despite herself, despite the fear and exhaustion and uncertainty. I like you too, kid. Now we need to figure out how to get you home safely. Can you remember your address? Or your dad's phone number? I live in Manhattan, the penthouse at Blackwell Tower on Fifth Avenue. But we cannot just go there. The kidnappers, they will be watching the building. They are waiting for my dad to pay them $5 million. If they see me with you before they get the money, they might hurt you too. They might hurt both of us. $5 million. The number was incomprehensible to Maya. More money than she could earn in 50 lifetimes. More money than existed in her entire world. What kind of universe did this boy come from, where his life was worth more than entire neighborhoods, more than thousands of people combined? Okay, she said, forcing herself to think clearly despite the absurdity of it all. Do you know your father's phone number? Maybe we can call him from a payphone, somewhere public, and arrange a safe meeting place. Ethan shook his head, fresh tears threatening. I only know the house line, and they will definitely be monitoring that. They said they have technology, that they are listening to everything. But I know where he will be tomorrow night. There is a charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum. It is for children with cancer, happens every year. He never misses it. My mom died from cancer when I was 4, so he always goes to honor her memory. He will be there tomorrow night, I am sure of it. The pain in Ethan's voice when he mentioned his mother was like a physical thing, raw and immediate and visceral. Maya felt it in her own chest, a sympathetic wound that reopened old scars. She knew that kind of loss intimately. Her own mother had died when she was 16, worked to death by 2 jobs and no health insurance, collapsing one day at the factory and never waking up. Different circumstances, same grief. The kind of grief that hollows you out and never quite fills back in. All right, Maya said, making another decision that would alter the trajectory of her life. Tomorrow night we go to the gala. We get you to your father. But until then, you stay here and you stay quiet and safe. Do not go near the windows. Do not make noise. We pretend you do not exist. Understood? Ethan nodded, relief flooding his face. Thank you, Maya. Thank you for saving me. You do not need to thank me, sweetheart. This is what people do. This is what they should do anyway. That night, Maya pulled down her Murphy bed and gave it to Ethan. She tucked him in with her only blanket, a threadbare thing she had owned since she was a teenager. Then she fashioned a sleeping spot on the floor, using a thin yoga mat, a couch cushion as a pillow, and her coat as a blanket. It was uncomfortable and cold, but she had slept in worse conditions. There had been times in the years after her mother died when she had slept in shelters or on subway trains, before she finally scraped together enough for this tiny apartment. She barely slept that night, jerking awake at every sound from the hallway, every siren in the distance, every shout from the street below. Her mind raced with possibilities, most of them bad. What if the kidnappers found them? What if she was making everything worse? What if taking Ethan had put them both in more danger? But every time doubt crept in, she looked at his small form in her bed, sleeping peacefully for the first time in days, and knew she had made the right choice. Ethan, exhausted beyond measure, slept like the dead, his small chest rising and falling with deep, even breaths. Occasionally he whimpered in his sleep, nightmares chasing him even in unconsciousness, and Maya would reach over and hold his hand until he calmed. In the gray light of dawn, Maya called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. She had perfect attendance, had never missed a day even when she had the flu, even when she threw out her backlifting mattresses. Her supervisor, a mean-spirited woman named Brenda, who seemed to take pleasure in others' suffering, was furious. You cannot just call in sick, Maya, Brenda snapped through the phone. We are short-staffed as it is. If you do not come in today, I will have to write you up. 3 write-ups and you are fired. You know the policy. I understand, Maya said calmly, though her heart was racing. But I am sick. I cannot come in. Sick with what? You sound fine to me. You know what I think? I think you are lying. I think you just do not want to work. Well, let me tell you something, Maya Torres. There are 100 girls who would kill for your job. You are replaceable. Do not forget that. Maya looked at Ethan, still sleeping peacefully in her bed, and felt something fierce and protective surge through her. Then replace me, she said, shocking herself with her own boldness. Because I am not coming in today, and I am not going to apologize for it. Some things are more important than scrubbing your toilets, Brenda. She hung up before Brenda could respond, her hands shaking. She had probably just lost her job. The job that kept her rent paid and food on her table. But looking at Ethan, she could not bring herself to regret it. Some things she was learning were more important than survival. Some things were worth risking everything for. They spent the day in the apartment, Ethan healing and Maya planning. She had one nice dress, purchased from a Goodwill thrift store for a coworker's wedding she had attended 2 years ago. It was black, simple, a little shapeless, but clean and intact. It was probably not fancy enough for a gala at the Metropolitan Museum, where tickets probably cost thousands of dollars and everyone wore designer labels. But it would have to do. She had no shoes except sneakers and work flats, no jewelry except a small silver cross her mother had given her for her 15th birthday. She would stand out like a sore thumb among the elite, but there was no other choice. They could not afford to wait, could not afford to hesitate. Ethan watched television for the first time in months, transfixed by cartoons in a way that made Maya's heart ache. When she mentioned how much he seemed to be enjoying it, he confirmed her suspicions. Dad says television rots your brain, Ethan explained during a commercial break. He says it makes you stupid and lazy. I mostly study all day. Every day. Tutors come from 8 in the morning until 6 at night. Math with Mr. Peterson. Science with Dr. Chen. 3 languages, French and Mandarin and Spanish, with different teachers. Music theory and piano with Maestro Villanova. Economics and stock market analysis with my dad's business partner, Mr. Rothschild. Sometimes I study until I fall asleep at my desk. You are 8 years old, Maya said, unable to hide her horror. You should be playing outside, having fun with friends, being a kid, learning, sure, but also just living and experiencing life. Dad says childhood is a luxury we cannot afford, Ethan recited, like he had heard it 1,000 times. He says I need to be ready to take over Blackwell Industries when I am older, maybe by the time I am 25. It is a legacy spanning 4 generations, and legacies require sacrifice. He says if I waste my childhood playing, I will regret it when I am an adult and unprepared for the responsibility. Maya felt anger bloom in her chest, hot and righteous and overwhelming. This boy, brilliant and kind despite his circumstances, was being robbed of his childhood by a father who valued money and legacy over humanity and happiness. It made her want to shake Alexander Blackwell until some sense rattled loose, until he understood what he was doing to his own son. Listen to me, Ethan, she said, turning off the television and kneeling in front of him with both hands on his shoulders. You are a child. You deserve to play, to laugh, to make mistakes and learn from them. Your worth is not measured by what company you will run or how much money you will make or what legacy you will continue. Your worth is inherent, built into who you are. You are valuable because you exist, because you are you, because you are a human being with thoughts and feelings and dreams. Do you understand what I'm saying? Tears welled in Ethan's bright green eyes, and for a moment, Maya thought she had said something wrong, crossed some invisible line, but then he threw his arms around her neck, holding on like she was the only solid thing in a world gone liquid, like she was a life raft in a stormy ocean. I wish you were my mom, he whispered into her shoulder, his voice breaking. I wish my real mom had not died. I wish everything was different. Maya hugged him back fiercely, her own tears falling silent and hot down her cheeks. I wish I could be, sweetheart. I wish I could be. You deserve so much better than what you have gotten. They stayed like that for a long time. 2 broken people finding comfort in each other, finding something that felt almost like family in a world that had tried its best to destroy them both. That evening, as the sun set over Brooklyn in shades of orange and purple, casting long shadows across her tiny apartment, Maya and Ethan prepared for their mission. It felt dramatic to think of it that way, but that was what it was. A mission to reunite a son with his father, to end this nightmare, to make things right. Maya dressed in her thrift store gown, wishing she had jewelry or makeup or anything to make her look like she belonged at a high society event. Her hair, usually pulled back in a practical ponytail, she tried to style into something elegant, finally settling on a simple bun at the nape of her neck. She looked plain, she knew, ordinary and poor, but there was dignity in her bearing, a straightness to her spine that years of hardship had not bent. Ethan wore his cleaned and dried designer clothes, the tear in his sweater carefully hidden beneath a jacket Maya had borrowed from her neighbor, Mr. Short Chen, an elderly man who never asked questions and often shared his dinner with her when times were especially hard. The jacket was too big, but it was better than nothing. They took the subway to Manhattan, a journey that took 45 minutes in 2 transfers. Ethan pressed his face against the window, watching the city transform from the rough, industrial neighborhoods of Brooklyn to the gleaming towers of Manhattan. Maya watched him watch the city, seeing it through his eyes, remembering when she had been young and full of hope, before life had taught her that hope was a luxury. They emerged from the subway near the Metropolitan Museum as twilight deepened into night. The museum was lit up like a palace, searchlights sweeping the sky in dramatic arcs. Limousines lined up at the entrance, like expensive dominoes. Women in gowns that cost more than Maya's yearly salary, maybe more than she would make in 5 years, glittered with diamonds and emeralds and sapphires. Men in custom tuxedos smoked cigars and laughed with the easy confidence of those who had never worried about money, never laid awake wondering how to pay rent or buy food. Maya felt sick with nerves, her stomach churning with anxiety and fear. This was insane. They would never get past security, never get close to Alexander Blackwell. Someone would stop them, question them, throw them out, or possibly call the police. But Ethan squeezed her hand, his small fingers wrapping around hers, and she forced herself to move forward. "Remember what I told you," Ethan whispered as they approached the entrance, the music and laughter growing louder. "Stay confident. Walk like you belong here. Act like you have every right to be at this gala. Rich people never question other rich people because they assume everyone around them is rich too. It is like a club, and if you act like you are in the club, they will believe you." It was surprisingly sophisticated advice from an 8-year-old, and it made Maya wonder what kind of world this boy had grown up in, what lessons he had learned that no child should have to learn. She straightened her spine, lifted her chin, arranged her face into an expression of mild boredom, and walked toward the entrance as if she attended galas every weekend, as if she belonged among the elite and wealthy. The security guard at the door, a bored-looking man in his 50s with a clipboard and a radio, barely glanced at them. He was too busy checking his phone, texting someone, completely uninterested in the parade of wealth flowing past him. They slipped inside, and Maya felt her breath catch in her throat. The museum interior had been transformed into something from a fairy tale, magical and overwhelming. The main hall had been converted into a ballroom, with an orchestra playing classical music that floated through the air like perfume. Ice sculptures of swans and angels glittered under massive crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than her entire building. Waiters in crisp white uniforms circulated with champagne and crystal flutes and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more per piece than Maya spent on groceries in a week. The crowd was a sea of designer labels and inherited wealth, everyone speaking in the low, cultivated tones of old money, of people who had never struggled, never worried, never had to choose between food and rent. Maya felt completely, utterly out of place. She might as well have been wearing a sign that said, "Poor person does not belong here." But Ethan tugged her forward, his eyes scanning the crowd with focused intensity, searching for his father. "There," he said suddenly, his voice tight with emotion, pointing toward a cluster of men near the far wall beneath a massive painting of Washington crossing the Delaware. "That is him. That is my dad." Alexander Blackwell was exactly what Maya expected, and nothing like she imagined all at once. Tall, probably 6'3", with dark hair graying elegantly at the temples and the same striking green eyes as his son. He wore a tuxedo that fit like it had been painted onto his athletic frame, custom made by someone famous probably. And he moved with the unconscious grace of someone who had never doubted his place in the world, never questioned his right to be wherever he was, handsome in a cold, sharp way, like a knife blade catching light, all hard angles and perfect symmetry. He held a glass of what looked like expensive whiskey in one hand, and his expression was one of mild amusement, as if the entire world was a joke only he understood, and everyone else was too stupid to get the punchline. He was surrounded by other wealthy men, all of them laughing at something he had just said, all of them vying for his attention, his approval, his friendship. He looked powerful, confident, completely in control. He also looked like he had not a care in the world, like nothing bad had ever happened to him or ever would. Maya felt Ethan tense beside her, felt his small body go rigid with emotion. "He does not know," the boy whispered, his voice breaking. "He does not know I am missing. Look at him. He is happy. He has no idea." That stopped Maya cold, sent ice through her veins. "What do you mean he does not know? You said you were kidnapped 3 days ago." "I was," Ethan said, tears starting to fall despite his efforts to hold them back. "They grabbed me 3 days ago on the way to school. My driver, James, he was in on it. He drove me right to them instead of to school. They must have told the school I was sick, forged a note or called pretending to be from my dad's office, and they must have told my dad something too. Some lie about where I was. Maybe they said I was at a special program or visiting relatives. I do not know. All I know is that I have been gone for 3 days, terrified and hurt and alone, and my own father has not even noticed. He has not come looking for me. He does not even know I am gone." The devastation in Ethan's voice was complete, absolute, soul-crushing. Here was a boy who had been kidnapped, who had fought his way free through courage and luck, who had spent days terrified and alone, and his own father had not even realized anything was wrong. What kind of man was so disconnected from his child that he would not notice a 3-day absence? What kind of father was so consumed by business and money that his son could disappear and he would just assume everything was fine? Maya wanted to march over there right now and slap Alexander Blackwell across his handsome, smug face. She wanted to scream at him, to make him understand what his negligence had done to his son, what damage he had caused through his absence and indifference. But before she could move or speak, before she could formulate a plan, Ethan was running. He darted through the crowd like a small missile, dodging waiters with their trays of champagne and socialites in their expensive gowns. His small form surprisingly fast despite his injured feet and exhausted state. Maya chased after him, trying to keep up, trying not to lose him in the sea of people, her heart hammering in her chest with fear and adrenaline. "Ethan, wait," she called. But he did not stop, did not slow down, driven by desperate need to reach his father. Ethan burst into the circle of wealthy men, throwing himself at Alexander with desperate force, wrapping his arms around his father's legs and holding on like his life depended on it. "Dad! Dad! I am here! I am okay!" Alexander Blackwell looked down at the child clinging to his expensive trousers with an expression of pure shock, his face going through several emotions in rapid succession. For a long moment, he seemed not to recognize his own son, staring at Ethan like he was a stranger, an intruder at this exclusive event. Then something clicked behind those green eyes and horror flooded his features, turning his face pale. "Ethan," he said, his voice uncertain, confused. "What are you doing here? You are supposed to be at home, in bed, recovering. You are sick. Mrs. Peterson said you had the flu." "I was not sick," Ethan said, his voice breaking, tears streaming down his face. "I was kidnapped. 3 days ago, Dad. 3 days. They took me, bad men with guns, and they wanted $5 million, and they were going to kill me. But I escaped. I ran away, and I have been hiding and scared and hurt, and nobody came looking for me. You did not even know I was gone. You did not even notice your own son was missing." The words dropped into the conversation like grenades, explosive and devastating. The other men in the circle stepped back awkwardly, suddenly very uncomfortable, looking anywhere but at Alexander and his son. The music seemed to fade, conversations around them dying as people sensed drama, turned to watch this unexpected scene unfold. Alexander Blackwell's face went through a cascade of emotions. Shock giving way to disbelief, giving way to horror, giving way to something that might have been shame. His expensive whiskey glass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the marble floor, amber liquid spreading like blood. "That is impossible," he said, his voice shaking despite his efforts to maintain control. "I spoke to Mrs. Peterson just this morning. She said you were feeling better, that you were studying from home. She sent me a status report. I have it on my phone." "She lied," Ethan said flatly, his young voice hard with bitterness no child should possess. "Or the kidnappers got to her, paid her off, or threatened her. I do not know and I do not care. All I know is that I was taken, drugged, held in a basement somewhere, and you did not notice because you never noticed me. You are always working, always busy with meetings and deals, and making more money. I could have died, Dad. I almost did die. And I would be dead right now if not for Maya." Alexander's eyes found Maya for the first time, really looking at her, seeing her. She felt exposed under that gaze, pinned like a butterfly under glass, every flaw illuminated by his analytical stare. She saw him take in her cheap dress, her worn shoes, her work-roughened hands, her complete lack of polish or sophistication. She was everything he was not, existed in a completely different world, and they both knew it. She represented a reality he had spent his entire life avoiding, the reality of struggle and hardship and real human suffering. "Who are you?" he asked, his cultured voice carrying easily despite the murmur of the crowd. He had the faint trace of a New England boarding school accent that money and decades had mostly erased but not completely. "Maya Torres," she said, lifting her chin defiantly, refusing to be intimidated despite the massive gulf between their worlds. "I found Ethan 2 nights ago in an alley behind a hotel in Brooklyn. He was hurt and scared and alone. I took him to my apartment, kept him safe, fed him, let him sleep. He told me there was danger, that the kidnappers said they had people inside the police watching everything. So we waited, and we came here tonight to find you, to get him home safely." Alexander stared at her like she was a puzzle he could not solve, an equation that did not make sense. "You took my son, a complete stranger, to your home, to your apartment." "I took a scared child somewhere safe," Maya corrected, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I did not know he was your son. I did not know who he was or where he came from. All I knew was that a little boy needed help, and I helped him. That is what decent people do, Mr. Blackwell. That is what humanity looks like." Something flickered in Alexander's expression. Something that might have been shame, or might have been anger, or might have been a combination of both. His jaw tightened, muscles jumping beneath his skin, and Maya braced herself for an explosion, for rage, for accusations. But before he could respond, before the moment could fully crystallize, the doors to the ballroom burst open with explosive force. 3 men in dark suits and ski masks rushed into the museum, guns drawn, and the orchestra music cut off with a discordant screech of violins. Screams erupted throughout the ballroom as people dove for cover, expensive gowns and tuxedos hitting the marble floor, champagne glasses shattering, chaos erupting in seconds. Maya grabbed Ethan instantly, pulling him behind her body, placing herself between this child and danger. Every maternal instinct she did not know she possessed screaming at her to protect him at any cost. She would die before she let anyone hurt this boy, this precious child who had somehow become hers in the space of 2 days. "Alexander Blackwell," one of the gunmen shouted, his voice echoing through the now silent ballroom. "We have come for what is owed. You did not pay the ransom. You did not even notice your son was missing. Now you pay a different price. Now you lose everything." Everything happened simultaneously in slow motion and far too fast. Security guards materialized from nowhere, drawing their own weapons, returning fire. The sharp crack of gunshots echoed off marble and high ceilings. Glass shattered in glittering cascades. Someone was screaming, a high, endless sound of pure terror. Alexander pushed both Maya and Ethan down to the floor, covering their bodies with his own, becoming a human shield as bullets flew overhead. Maya could smell his cologne, expensive and subtle, something with notes of cedar and bergamot, mixed with the acrid scent of gunpowder and fear. She could feel Ethan trembling beneath her, could hear his ragged breathing, could feel his rapid heartbeat, and she thought with strange crystal clarity that this was how she would die. On the floor of the Metropolitan Museum, protecting a boy she barely knew from men she had never met, in a world that was not hers. It seemed fitting somehow, dying while doing something that mattered, dying while being useful. But she did not die. The gunfight lasted less than a minute, security overwhelming the kidnappers with brutal efficiency, subduing them with tackles and handcuffs. Police flooded the building within minutes, sirens wailing, along with paramedics and more chaos than Maya had ever witnessed. In the aftermath, as people slowly emerged from cover, checking themselves for injuries, Maya found herself still pinned beneath Alexander Blackwell's larger frame, his heart hammering against her back like a drum, his breath hot on her neck. "Is everyone all right?" he asked, his voice hoarse and shaking. "Ethan, Maya, are you hurt?" "I am okay," Ethan whispered, his voice small and scared. "Maya, are you okay?" "I am fine," she managed, though her ears were ringing painfully from the gunshots, and her hands were shaking so badly she had to clench them into fists. "We are all fine. We are alive." Alexander rolled off them carefully, helping first Ethan and then Maya to their feet with surprising gentleness. His tuxedo was rumpled and dirty, his perfect hair disheveled, and there was something wild and raw in his eyes that had not been there before. Fear, Maya realized with shock. Real, genuine, uncontrolled fear. Maybe the first time this man had ever been truly afraid in his privileged life. "If you had not brought him here tonight," Alexander said to Maya, his voice unsteady and rough. "If he had still been missing, if I had not known, if we had not been together, they would have killed him right in front of me. They came here tonight specifically to hurt me, to take everything from me, to make a point about power and money. You saved his life twice, Maya Torres. Twice. Once in that alley, and once by bringing him here tonight." Maya did not know what to say to that, had no words adequate for this moment, so she said nothing. She just held Ethan close, feeling his small heartbeat against her chest, alive and real and miraculous. They had survived. Against all odds, against all logic, they had survived. The rest of the night passed in an exhausting blur of police statements and questions and medical checks. Paramedics examined all three of them, pronounced them physically unharmed except for shock and minor bruises. The kidnappers, their ski masks removed to reveal ordinary faces that could have belonged to anyone, were arrested and led away in handcuffs, their elaborate conspiracy already beginning to unravel under police interrogation. It turned out Alexander's head of security was the mastermind, along with Ethan's tutor, Mrs. Peterson, and several others, including the family's longtime driver. A vast network of betrayal, all motivated by greed, all willing to hurt a child for money. Finally, near dawn, with the first gray light beginning to illuminate Manhattan's towers, they were released from the museum. Alexander led them to his limousine waiting outside, black and sleek and utterly foreign to Maya's world, like something from a movie rather than real life. "I will take you home," Alexander said, opening the door for them. "Both of you, to my home, to Blackwell Tower. You will stay with us, Maya, as my guest, for as long as you like. Forever, if you choose. I owe you everything." Maya almost laughed at the absurdity of it, this billionaire offering her a place in his world. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Blackwell. Really, I do. But I have a life, a job, or I did before I called in sick, an apartment, such as it is, responsibilities. I cannot just disappear into your penthouse and play fairy tale. That is not how life works." "Your job," Alexander said quietly, "the one you called in sick from yesterday to protect my son. Did your employer react well to that?" Maya flushed, remembering Brenda's threats and anger, the very real possibility that she no longer had employment. "That is not your concern or your problem." "Let me help you," Alexander said, and there was something vulnerable in his voice that had not been there before, something human beneath the polished billionaire exterior. "Please, you saved Ethan's life, twice. You gave him shelter and food when you had almost nothing. You risked everything for him without knowing who he was or expecting anything in return. Let me repay that debt. Let me help you the way you helped us. I told you before, Maya said tiredly. I do not want your debt or your guilt money. Then let me offer you a job, Alexander said, improvising, thinking on his feet the way he did in boardrooms and negotiations. As Ethan's nanny and companion, someone to watch over him, protect him, someone he trusts and feels safe with. The people I employed to care for him, all of them, they betrayed us. They sold him out for money. I need someone I can trust, someone with real integrity, someone who actually cares about my son as a person rather than as a paycheck or an opportunity. That person is you, Maya. You have already proven it. Maya stared at him, the offer hanging in the air between them. A job, a real job with real pay and presumably real security, health insurance, all the things she had never had. It was tempting, dangerously seductive, the kind of opportunity that would never come again. But something held her back, some instinct for self-preservation. Why? She asked, searching his face for deception or ulterior motive. You do not know me, Mr. Blackwell. We just met. I am a stranger, a poor hotel maid from Brooklyn. Why would you trust me with your son? Because Ethan trusts you, Alexander said simply, gesturing to his son who was watching this exchange with desperate hope. And because in the last 48 hours, you have shown more genuine care and love for my child than I have managed in the last 2 years, maybe longer. I am not good at this, Maya, being a father. I know how to run companies and make money and close deals. I am excellent at business, but I have no idea how to be a parent, how to connect with my son, how to show him love rather than just providing material things. Ethan deserves better than what I have been giving him. He deserves someone who sees him as a person with feelings and needs, not just as an heir to a fortune or a legacy to be managed. He deserves someone exactly like you. The vulnerability in Alexander's voice was startling, completely at odds with his public persona as a ruthless business titan. Maya saw in that exhausted moment with dawn breaking over Manhattan, not a billionaire or a mogul or a member of the elite, but just a man who was terrified of failing his son. A man who had already failed in so many ways but was desperate, truly desperate, to do better. Please, Maya, Ethan added, grabbing her hand with both of his green eyes pleading. Please stay with us. Please do not leave me. I do not want you to go. You are the only person who has ever made me feel like I matter, like I am more than just the Blackwell heir. How could she possibly say no to that? To this child who had somehow stolen a piece of her heart in just 2 days, to this chance at something better than scrubbing toilets for minimum wage, to this opportunity to actually make a real difference in someone's life, how could she walk away? Okay, Maya said softly, the word feeling momentous, life-changing. Okay, I will try. I will stay and take care of Ethan, help him however I can. But I have conditions, Mr. Blackwell. If I do this, we do it my way. Ethan gets to be a child. He gets to play and have friends and go to regular school with other kids. No more 14-hour study sessions. No more treating him like a small adult who needs to be molded into a business leader. He is 8 years old and he deserves a childhood. Do you understand? Alexander nodded, relief flooding his features. Yes, whatever you think is best. I trust your judgment more than my own at this point. Good, Maya said firmly. Then we have a deal. The relief on both their faces was identical and overwhelming. Father and son united in their desperate need for her presence, for her guidance, for her love. It should have been terrifying, this sudden responsibility for a child's well-being and happiness. Instead, it felt like the most natural thing in the world, like everything in her hard life had been leading to exactly this moment. They rode to Blackwell Tower in silence, the city passing outside the tinted limousine windows like a dream, like a foreign country. Maya had lived in New York her entire 23 years, but had never seen it from this angle, from inside the bubble of wealth and privilege that insulated people like Alexander from the harsh realities most people faced. It was beautiful from here, all glittering lights and architectural marvels, but it also felt lonely somehow. disconnected from real life. The Blackwell Tower penthouse was obscene in its luxury, almost offensive in its extravagance. The entire top floor of a Fifth Avenue building, it featured floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Manhattan in every direction. The city spread out below like a glittering map of possibility. The furniture was all designer pieces that probably cost more than cars. The art on the walls worth more than most houses in America. Everything was perfect, sterile, climate-controlled, more like a five-star hotel or a museum than an actual home where people lived. There were no personal touches, no family photos, nothing that indicated a child lived here. It was beautiful and soulless. "Your room," Alexander said, leading Maya down a long hallway, lined with abstract art she did not understand, "is here, right next to Ethan's room so you can hear him if he needs you at night. It has its own bathroom and walk-in closet. If you need anything at all, anything, just call the building's concierge desk. They operate 24 hours and can arrange anything from food delivery to personal shopping to medical care." He opened a door, and Maya stepped into a space that made her tiny studio apartment look like a closet by comparison. The bedroom was bigger than some apartments she had looked at, featuring